mean, the starter. Oh God.
Hi, Claire.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. And yourself?
I'm very good. I was scrapping around there for a video and then I realised we were live.
Yes, smooth, just as we rehearsed it.
All those rehearsal hours, all those practice runs, and I've messed it up.
Well, welcome. Good evening. Thanks for coming along tonight. Royal Bar Whiskies with no problem. Royal Bar Whiskies with Tomintoul Distillery. It's a little hard engaging the brain after the Christmas shutdown, but it's in a very relaxing, easy way tonight.
This is what we wanted.
Did you have a nice Christmas?
Yeah, I just moved from the living room to the kitchen and back again. To be honest, it's what I've been doing for the last 6 months, but with more of a festive spirit this time. Just my body weight in pigs and blankets. It's been great. How about you? Did you have a nice Christmas?
Yeah, I did. It was very, very relaxing. It'd been a hell of a year in retail, and the guys are obviously working really hard. Quite difficult retail environment, but our customers were great. They all came out through all the challenges, and we did okay. And we sold a few of this beautiful Tomintoul that we're going to try for the first time tonight. So normally we have a kind of range of samples that we're going to try. But tonight we're effectively just trying one whiskey, but one very special one. 16-year-old, chosen by Robert Fleming, single cask, went on sale just before Christmas and really done to celebrate 30 years of Robert working at a distillery. And a great friend of the company and a super guy. And I imagine pretty good person to learn from, Claire.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I thought it'd be quite nice to end this year on a high and celebrate something after the year we've all had. So Robert's celebrating his 30 years at Tomintoul, obviously longer in the industry, but I won't spoil anything. I'll let him talk to you about that. But yeah, he's probably, I'm not just saying this, he's probably one of the kindest and kind of most enthusiastic people that I've had the pleasure of working with in whiskey. And I know he's going to be so annoyed if I keep giving him lots of compliments, but he is truly, truly someone that is special in the whiskey industry. So I'll bring him in and he can tell you all about himself. There we go. Hello, Robert.
Hi all. Thank you, Claire. That was some introduction.
I was going to go on.
Not rehearsed in one bit. Not rehearsed in one bit.
I didn't say any of my rehearsal. I've really mucked this up.
So you obviously got my email.
Yeah. Keep it short, keep it snappy, and get to the point. That's exactly what I did.
Excellent.
But I
How's
should
everybody?
Probably say,
How's everybody?
good,
All
yeah,
good,
really
yes.
good. Yeah. I was going to say just before we start, if anyone's got any questions to ask, I'm going to be behind the scenes, so can put them on the screen for Robert and Arthur to answer. So please submit your questions. If not, I'll be back with a handful at the end for a Q&A. So I will leave you in the capable hands of Arthur. Robert, you'll be safe, don't worry. And I'm going to remove myself from the screen to get busy behind the scenes.
Okay. Catch you later, Claire.
Claire definitely had the lockdown broom cupboard vibes going on there, didn't she?
I think so, yeah. March to December and the broom cupboard's not good.
Yeah. So I think we'll you've got some of the whiskey, have you?
I do. Very kindly, there's a story to this as well. This just arrived today. The courier couldn't get up to the house today because of the snow. So I had to go down and meet him halfway. So I'm very grateful for the bottle, Arthur. Very grateful you actually asked me to select a cask for your single cask bottling. And as you know, the 16-year-old's always been a favourite. So I was very glad that I could select the cask. And if I could also just say at this point, I'm also very pleased that you are making a substantial donation to a charity close to our family's heart, the MND Scotland. So every bottle sold was a substantial donation going to MND, and I'm very grateful for what you did.
Yeah, I think it's £10 less VAT of each bottle sale goes to an M&D charity. Obviously, a terrible way to go, and also charities have had a tough time in this 2020 as well, with a lot of the usual ways to raise funds taken away from them. You normally get people running marathons and things like that. It's a lot tougher. So it's a great pleasure to be able to do it. Thank you.
And I'm also grateful that I'm not going to open this one. I'm grateful you sent me. I'm grateful you sent me a small one, because I don't know if any of my family are watching, but I got bottle number 1. I've never had a bottle number 1 before, so I'm very grateful for that as well. Thank you. This one won't be drunk.
We had a few Flemings order bottles actually and request specific numbers.
I did hear. Yes, I did hear. I think birth dates were very popular.
Yeah, but number 1 was off the table. That was always going to be yours. Always going to be yours. And I suppose the original plan of it was to bottle the cask in time for Whisky Fringe in 2020. A festival you've been very kind to support, right? Although you seem to build a nice wee holiday around it, don't you, to Edinburgh?
Don't tell the company that. This is hard work when we come down to Edinburgh. A lovely weekend we spend in Edinburgh with usually the same crew we take down with us, and Nikki and my daughter Cheryl, and Douglas Scott comes along, Ian Forteith, he comes along as well, so Claire obviously. So yeah, it's a nice get together, but we always tell people it's hard work.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, and I think the idea was to bottle it for that, sell it at Whisky Fringe to celebrate your 30th year and what a big supporter of the show you've been. Lockdown happened, totally forgot about it, and then suddenly a sample turned up in first week of November, I think it was.
Yeah, it was quite late.
It was quite late, and stuck my nose in a glass. Instant, yes, please have our name on the bottle. Please put our name on the bottle as well as Robert's, and as an exclusive. But I doubted that there's any way in the world they would get it turned around and onto our shelves by the end of 2020. But I think it's testament to how much your bosses value your time at the company, that there were a few fingers clicked from on high, and boy, did it get turned around quickly. And I think we got it on shelf for the 15th, which is amazing at these times.
It was a quick turnaround, and again, full credit to the team at the bottling plant at Coatbridge, headed by Stephen. I'm sure maybe in the background, Douglas Scott was pulling a few strings along there, but yeah, it's. But I think we've got a reputation. Our bottling plant's got a reputation for quick turnarounds anyway. So yeah, I'm pleased they managed to do it, especially a single cask, because it's on a single cask line, so it's different to the fast automatic lines.
Well, but having bottled, I don't know how many casks, but lots of casks from lots of different companies, and we assess the samples. I normally get second opinions from guys in the office, in the shops, and they say, well, how long will it take? And I say average lead times are 6 weeks to 18 months, depending on the company we're working with. And I think you guys did it in 4 weeks or something, so it's a new record. Congratulations. Well,
we've set a benchmark now, so hopefully if you do any more of these, we can achieve the same result.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So we've got a long and glorious career to discuss. Well, certainly a very interesting career with 30 years at Tomintoul Distillery. And may I ask how many years in total? When did you first go up the road to Glenlivet?
46 and a half and counting.
46.
46 and a half. So it's been 30 and a half years at Tomintoul. And I'll have to pick you up in your pronunciation again, Arthur.
I know,
okay.
Tomintoul. I was going to hang a towel in the corner of the room. Tomintoul, yeah, please.
I started Tomintoul in the end of April 1990, after 16 years at Glenlivet and Chivas. So, but it doesn't seem like 30 at Tomintoul or 46 in the industry. It's flowing past.
And in all that time, you've not really moved that far, have you? So I'm counting up the distilleries in my head. So Glenlivet, Tomintoul, Glenkeith, Longbourn, Benriach.
Yeah, started off at Glenlivet. I was actually in Glenlivet in 1972, but then I had a different career for just about 2 years. I was a civil servant for 2 years, but I didn't like the civil service, and not just too sure. I don't think a civil service liked me either. So, so I was home one weekend, and the manager of Glenlivet offered me a job in warehousing at Glenlivet, and I took it. A lovely old guy called Bob Arthur. He was the manager there when I was growing up, and
that's a merging of both our names, isn't it? Bob Arthur, did you say?
Bob Arthur, yeah. So it was very fortunate that I just happened to be home that weekend, and he offered me a job, which I grasped. And over the years, between 1974 and 1983, I did everything in the warehousing, all production areas. And then when Chivas Brothers took over Glenlivet, I was taken on to the Chivas management training scheme, and went to my first posting was to Benriach as a trainee brewer at Benriach, which was fantastic because, again, worked with amazing people down there. But the key thing for me was they had a floor maltings, and although I had growing up in Glenlivet from a very tiny age, the maltings at Glenlivet were like a playpen for me. But when I went to Benriach, it was work, obviously, and to see the maltings still in operation and to be able to basically get involved in the process was something that a lot of people don't get the opportunity. So I was there for a year, covered Longmorn as well, and then back up to Glenlivet for a short spell at their animal feed plant. And all the time that Chivas were trained, you were doing the Chivas training, you were getting loads of experience, not just on the process side, because no distilleries are operated the same way, but also managing people. And that was key because you moved around different distilleries. And I got to a stage, I went to Glenkeith in Strathyla, and I got to a stage where I needed a fresh challenge. So Tomintoul beckoned.
Just go back a bit to that, what you said, Glenlivet Maltings was your playpen. So you grew up very, very close to Glenlivet. And how do you mean the Maltings was your playpen?
Well, my dad, he was at Glenlivet at the time, and if anybody knows Glenlivet, the distillery at that time was a very small community. You know, you had we stayed in a row of houses, just I keep saying about a 9 iron away from the still house at Glenlivet, and there was another area called Castleton, which again. All the houses there were not owned, but they were tenanted by the workers of the distillery. So from a very early age, I was down at the distillery with my dad, and a lot of the workforce basically took me under their wing, and I'd go down. At that time, they had a floor maltings. You could run around on the malt floor, probably to the annoyance of the maltster, but to me it was just somewhere to play around in. And obviously the guys, you probably wouldn't get away with it nowadays, but from a very early age, you'd go down and you'd see them operating the stills, you would see them mashing, you would see all processes. That might only have been about age 7 to 10, and you wouldn't be able to do that nowadays with the various health and safety aspects. But in those days, it was just another place to play for me. Mm-hmm. I've got lots of memories of the workforce there at the time. Most of the stories involve drink, but so some of them can't be repeated, I would imagine. But a lot of good people who just dedicated their lives to making whiskey. Really, really nice people.
Mm. And well, you do hear a lot of stories about people, by modern standards, being pretty drunk on the job, but that was part of the culture, I suppose. But
that in those days it wasn't. I mean, I'm not saying it was rife, but in those days you used to get used to get drams. You'd start in the morning, you'd get a dram, usually clear spirit from the brewer at 63.5% alcohol, and then if you're in the warehouse, you might get and all this was you could call it legal because every distillery did it, and thankfully in the late 60s into the 70s, the 70s going into the 80s, the dramming ceased because obviously the health authorities, drink driving, all of that obviously meant that you couldn't. So the dramming had to stop. But the time that dramming was still going, there was quite a few stories about. One comes to mind, if I can just. There was an old guy. I won't mention the guy. No, I won't mention the guy's name. But in those days, you had what they called prior stokers for the fires. Basically, the stills had a fire burning underneath the still. But to feed the fire, you had this stoker, which basically was a conveyor that fed the coal into the furnace. And the coal was actually fed through a hopper. To get the hopper, you had a wooden ramp, and you'd load up your coal into a barrow, push it up the ramp, tip it into the hopper. And this had to be done quite continuous. And one memorable occasion, the Stillman had been celebrating Aberdeen winning some competition in the football. And
it must have been a long time ago.
Oh, I can't remember the date now. I should have Googled the dates. I can't remember. It must have been, mid to late 60s. Can't remember what it was. Anyway, he'd celebrated too much, loaded up the barrow, up the ramp. The barrow never made the hopper. The barrow and the operator tilted over and fell into a heap. And my dad was called down to see what the problem was. And my dad found him in this heap in the corner. He had a cut to his head and everything. So basically, he was just sent home, and that was it. back on shift the next day.
Well, that's what I was going to ask: is whether or not you can come back the next day. That's a big difference now, I suppose.
He would have got a ticking off, but I think it's not very often that Aberdeen won anything. So I think maybe there was a bit of leniency given out.
Yeah, once every couple of decades.
Not all the stories involve drink, obviously.
No. And I suppose your career, but then I suppose especially if we add the fact that your father worked at Glenlivet as well, but your career has spanned a time of great change within the industry. A bit of modernisation, progress, some people would call it. I'm sure from the distillery manager's perspective it is. Certain whisky fans like the idea of direct-fired stills that you mentioned. You've seen a lot of change in that time. The distilleries work in a very different way than to when you started.
Yeah, and even before I joined the industry, you go back to the early 60s, a lot of the distilleries at that time had direct fire stills, for example. Now, a lot of people didn't like when the direct fire changed to indirect firing. So instead of having coal or gas burning at the bottom of the furnace, they changed to steam coils or external heaters. And a lot of people were very concerned this would change the character of the whisky. Nowadays, you could count in one hand the number of distilleries that are direct fired. And it's very difficult for people to compare. You can compare whiskies, bottled whiskies from, say, the 1960s to the present day. In fact, in the 1960s, there wasn't the range of expressions that you get nowadays. Glenlivet had one expression, Glenfiddich had one, you'd have had Glenmorangie, you'd have had Aberlour. They would have only had one single malt. It wouldn't have been very good for Royal Mile whiskies. You'd have had a very small shop because most distilleries would only have one expression. So it's very difficult to compare. It's even more difficult to compare the new spirit from the 1960s and 70s to the new spirit produced today. The only way that the consumer would ever be able to find that out would be to get into some of the liquid archives of the companies who maybe have, new spirit made from the 60s and 70s, and obviously new spirit made up to the present day. So it's very difficult to compare. But just imagine when I was growing up, Glenlivet had 2 peat stacks just near where the visitor centre is now. And so obviously, and they had, if you look at some of the old photographs, they had kilns and they burned peat. So go back to the 1940s, 50s, 60s, Glenlivet would have had some peated malt in their whiskies. Now, I imagine nowadays that doesn't happen. So, yeah, the new spirit from those days to the current day would be different. What you try to achieve as a distiller, you try to achieve consistency throughout. So you would hope that those that converted to indirect firing made a comparison between their new spirit and the spirit they made when it was direct fire, just to check that it wasn't vastly different to previous. So
that's interesting. So at the time of change, people were discussing it and were worried that it would change the spirit character. And after they made those changes, they were checking it again, and were some people saying, "See, I told you," and other people saying, "Oh no, it's fine, it's the same."
Yeah, and it was another. And again, I can only comment on my production years, but when I started out, the distillery had 4 pairs of stills, and when they were converting them off direct fire to indirect, they didn't do them all at once, and because they were very frightened that the character would change. And I'm sure lots of other companies were the same. Tomintoul was different because Tomintoul never had direct firing. They were always indirect. So to compare the new spirit from the 1960s to the new spirit today, hopefully, we're making the same character of spirit that the people who built Tomintoul, the people who took had the idea of starting a distillery in Tomintoul, what they wanted a very light, fruity, estery spirit. I think they would call it the Glenlivet style, but like a space. And that's what they wanted. And they designed the plant, they designed everything to achieve that new spirit. So they knew what the end result was going to be, or they thought they knew what the end result should be when they were planning the distillery. So we were luckier than most at Tomintoul because we didn't have the dilemma of going from direct firing to indirect and wondering if it would change. We've always been indirect.
Mm-hmm. So built in '65 as a modern distillery, effectively. But then by the time you joined, there were probably, and certainly now, there are elements to Tomintoul Distillery that are slightly old-fashioned, as distilleries with older foundation dates have modernised beyond you. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. 1965, the process was all manual. It was upgraded in 1973. We increased the capacity up to the present day's capacity of 3.4 million litres of alcohol. And that was done just before, or just at the time that Tomintoul was purchased by White & Mackay. So by increasing the capacity up to 3.4, what we had we didn't modernise too much. It was just basically the mash house that we upgraded. The still house was just added to it. And then since 1973, there's been no automation, and that's been a conscious decision by the company, especially the current owners, Angus Dundee Distillers. When we first met the family who owned the company, the chairman, Mr. Hillman, made it quite clear that he liked to see people doing things, because that's a tradition. So he wanted to see people mashing, people distilling, and so we've honoured that right up to the present day. We've got very small amounts of, I wouldn't say automation, but to take out some of the repetitive jobs. But we're not computer controlled anywhere in the production.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about ownership, you mentioned Angus Dundee, obviously now a great family company that we really enjoy working with, and you do feel that very much, that it is a family company. But working back the way, what have we got? We've got Angus Dundee, White & Mackay. And then was it the brokers who founded it before that? I think there was maybe
1965 it was two broking companies, W.S. Strong and Hay McLeod, and then in the late 90s, that was in 1965, and then in the late 1960s we purchased Fettercairn, and then in '73 we got taken over by White & Mackay. White & Mackay at that time had one distillery, Dalmore. White & Mackay were owned by a company called Suits, S-U-I-T-S. That was the Scottish Universal Investment Trust, and it was owned by Sir Hugh Fraser. And Suits were obviously owned by a bigger organisation run by a guy called Tiny Rowland. And so that was in 1973, and then it continued that way. There was a spell just before I joined in 1990. 2 years before I joined, they were sold to a private company who basically didn't do anything for White & Mackay. So I think quite early on they decided they would go their own way. And so in 1990, when I went for the job interview, they were without an owner. I'm thinking, why am I going to join a company that doesn't know the direction they're going in? However, by the time that I started, they were owned by a company called Gallagher's. And Gallagher's had quite a large... They were owned by a company called American Brands. And American Brands owned Titleist golf equipment, Prestige, cookware. They were quite a diverse company, but they also owned Jim Beam at that time. And Gallagher's were part of American brands. However, Gallagher's made cigarettes. And in the early 90s, there's a lot of lawsuits in America, for cigarette companies. So they
apparently
decided
it's bad for your health.
it's very bad for your health. Well, we've taken out a cigar mob, but that's okay. That's different. That's not smoking.
Yeah, you don't inhale. Just tickle the top of your throat. That's all.
So Gallagher's wanted to separate. They had to separate from the parent company, so we got shifted from Gallagher's to America. Well, at that time it was called JBB Greater Europe. So and that was the way it remained. 1994, we purchased Invergordon Distillers. Sadly, we mothballed 3 distilleries that same year. Tamnavulin, Tullybarden and Bruichladdich. And all now are thriving, so that's good to see. I don't like to see any distillery closed down for any reason.
No.
And then in the late 1990s, we met up with the Hillman family, who wanted to buy a distillery, which we tried to sell them Tamnavulin, but they didn't want Tamnavulin. In fairness, Tamnavulin hadn't run for a few years, so it was a bit cold and miserable. Still quite very close to my heart, but it just happened that they didn't like Tamnavulin and they wanted to visit Tomintoul. And then Mr. Hillman wanted to buy Tomintoul, which wasn't for sale. But anyone who knows the Hillman family, very persuasive. So by early 2000, they had started the process of buying Tomintoul. And to be honest, I've had a great career. Glenlivet Distillers, Chivas Brothers, White and Mackay. Can't fault any of those companies, but working for a family company is something totally different. And I always said to people, if you get the chance to work for a family company, grasp it with both hands, because it's just a variety. I'm not knocking the big boys, but if you're working for the big companies, you're into production or warehousing or whatever. Whereas in the family companies, basically you get involved in everything, from raw materials to right through to the warehousing, the blending, and everything in between, project work, health and safety, environmental, everything comes under your remit at some point. So the variety is amazing. And there's a lot of people similar to myself that are in smaller companies, and I'm sure they're enjoying it as much as I do.
Well, all those different companies of ownership, there's a good question here that Claire's kindly put on screen from Graham Fraser. How has Tomintoul changed for Robert under different ownership? So I'm guessing in terms of spirit and spirit character, has there been a desire to shift in a certain direction or to change? No?
The spirit character, we always tried Angus Dundee, they did change. We have changed something since they took over in year 2000. But for the majority of the year, for the 40 plus weeks of the year, we're making our standard new spirit. And that spirit should be the same last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago, 30 years ago when I joined. So it should be the same. That's what we strive for. Because bearing in mind, when Tomintoul was owned by White and Mackay, we produced a single malt. Those who remember the old perfume bottle, with some with affection, some not. But they did produce a single malt, but that wasn't their key aim. The aim was to produce spirit for blends, not just their own blends, but other companies' blends. So what we had to do is we produced a spirit that we're able to exchange with other companies. Now, a lot of big companies, with big brands might have Tomintoul in their brands. So to be able to continually exchange with those companies, because if I change with the big boys, I get a selection of their new spirit from their distilleries back into us. So, and we need that for our blends. So what happens is that I've got to maintain the consistency of the new spirit at Tomintoul every day, every week, every month, as I said, because we need to exchange it with others. So that's a new spirit. There's the other side of the coin where there's the mature spirit, the mature whiskey. And that's where a lot of the differences occur. So my new spirit should be standard, and then you get all the different characteristics. For example, from the Tomintoul, a single cask, in a first fill bourbon cask. You can have second fill bourbon, third fill, you can have sherry casks, port casks, a plethora of wine casks now that companies are filling. So but my standard spirit should be the same. And irrespective of who owns the company, Angus Dundee, White & Mackay, WS Strong, that spirit should be the same. The only difference to that is for 5 weeks of the year, I make a peated spirit. And it's heavily peated. It's called Ballantruan. And that's the only change that we've made to the production. In fact, the production process for making the Ballantruan, we don't change. The only difference is the peated malt that we take in. So the mashing's the same, fermentation's the same, distillation times are the same, everything's the same, except the peated malt that we take in that's different. And we do that for most of the year.
Was the decision to make a peated malt, was that to add an extension to the single malt range as a product, or was that to fulfill blending needs?
Initially, it would have been because predominantly Angus Dundee were a blending company. And that's one of the reasons that I'm sure Mr. Hillman and the family wanted to buy Tomintoul, because we produced a spirit that people wanted for their blends. And also we get spirit, as I said earlier, we get spirit back in from the other distilleries. So obviously the Hillmans had done their homework, and Tomintoul was an ideal fit for them. Making the peated spirit was so that we could create different blends. And traditionally you could buy your peated spirit from, or you could exchange with the spirit companies that are based in Islay. Not many at that time were making peated spirit on the mainland. So we felt, the family felt, that it may be difficult in future years, because we have to think many years ahead. It might be difficult in future years to acquire sufficient peated spirit for our blends. So I got asked, could you make peated whiskey? And I said, yeah, no reason why we can't. So we started making it in 2001. And we've made it every year. We've gradually increased. It was only 1 week a year. Now we're up to, this year we've just done 6 weeks production of peated spirit. And then as it was maturing, we obviously take samples, present them to the family so they could monitor the process, how it's maturing. And again, the family found that it would stand alone in its own right. So we took out a non-aged bottling, Old Ballantruan, and it went down very well. And then we started to add to that range, and now we've got a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. So and we've also got the Tomintoul family. We've introduced the Peaty Tang. That's a Tomintoul family, which is sort of different to the Old Ballantruan. So it came about for the blends, but obviously over the years we've taken it out as a single in its own right.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose to come back to Graham's question, I think it was early 2001, 2002, where the range that we recognise as now is probably starting with the 10, I think, came out first, but then the 16 seems to be the one within the range that people love. since that's come along, and I imagine sales have grown quite nicely, they certainly have done with us, that increasing importance of Tomintoul as a brand, that hasn't affected how you're making the spirit. You're not making spirit to suit the single malt market, apart from doing the peaty whiskey.
The spirit I make, well, I don't make. My team makes it at Tomintoul. I've got a really fantastic team. We've actually got both distilleries. We've got people who have been with us for many, many years, dedicate their lives to making a quality spirit. And we work 24 hours, 7 days a week, so they've got a lot of authority and responsibility. But yeah, the spirit that we've been producing, irrespective, when I make it, when the team makes it, when it's filled into cask, I don't know if it's going to be kept for 5-year-old blend or a 21-year-old malt. We don't actually lay down the stock just to say this is what it's going to be for, because the spirit quality, the new spirit, is going to be the same every time. It's a cask selection that makes the difference. So over the years, and again, mainly from an Angus Dundee perspective, we've, again, hats off to the family, that they've realised early on that if you make this spirit to the highest quality, if you put it into rubbish casks, you get rubbish whiskey. So we select the casks very carefully. We took a lot of bourbon casks in from the US. We started in 2004 taking in sherry casks from Spain, from Jerez, and that's increased over the years. We have done some port casks, and recently we've started taking in different casks, wine casks, and they're still work in progress. And we've taken out the cigar malt, which has just been recently released. So we're always adding to the range, and we've also taken in a team. I think Claire's in the background. We've taken in a team of people that do brand ambassadorial work, marketing, social media, and that's always to promote the single malt. And these guys, they spend a lot of time out of the country, Europe, USA, Far East, promoting the single malts, both Tomintoul and Glencadam, and that's a growing part of the business. That didn't happen, and no disrespect to White and Mackay, that didn't happen in their tenure because they had their other single malts to promote. But Angus Dundee is just taking us on to a different level.
Well, it's expensive branding a single malt, putting it onto the market, finding that route to market. So it's understandable that these distilleries only have time to focus on certain things. But we're delighted you guys have the time and the energy to work on Tomintoul and Glencadam. Working in a distillery, it's a strange job in many ways in terms of how do you measure success? I think from a simpleton's retailer perspective, we know that if we have a good Christmas, we'll probably still have a job in spring, and except summer is crucial, but you do the right bits of marketing, you give good service, and you can see the rewards fairly instantly, because you're not, as you said, you're not making whiskey, you make spirit, and it's 10 years for that kind of maturation. Beyond your staff not blowing the place up, what is success? What is success? How do you reward them? Is it about efficiency? Is it about, are you measuring and assessing the spirit as they go?
It's a good question, because everybody will have different measurements of success. There could be a measurement of success that you've achieved your production target for the year, or the sales guys have achieved their sales target. So everybody's got their own measurement of success. If you take the health and safety people, their measurement of success would be making sure there's no serious accidents or worse at the distilleries. So everybody's got their own different measurement of success. I've got a very wide-ranging job, so there's different areas that you can sort of tag the success onto, whether it was achieving the yield, or fuel efficiency, or making sure that the bottling team have got turned around this bottle in 4 weeks. that was a success for the bottling team. So so everybody's got their own measurement of success, whether you're from the production side or the marketing team. They'll measure success on how their campaign has went for their single malt. But you mentioned there about laying the stuff down for 10 plus years. A lot of our blends are between 3 and 8 years old, so we're still laying down a lot of stock. But if I was to ask Royal Mile how much 16-year-old Tomintoul you're going to sell in 16 years' time, if you can tell me that, I could lay down some stock for the next 16 years. Nobody can tell me. Well, it's difficult for the big boys even to predict 3 years in advance. Look at the number of, I'm sure, I don't know how old you are, but I've seen a number of industry collapses in my time. The early 1980s, 1990. The industry went through a really hard time. Distillery closures, etc.
Yeah, well, in 16 years' time, I won't be worried too much. I'll be on one of my yachts. So,
very good.
Yeah, no, I'll be fine. But I did want to ask about that, but I didn't want it to be too gloomy. But you mentioned mothballing, presumably Tamlavulin, I think it was, and that did trigger in me this thought of 83 and 84 when we had a lot of closures, the early 93 around that time as well. I mean, that's a unusual and somber role to mothball a distillery, to shut it down, not knowing if it's going to open again.
It is. It's sadly, well, I was looking after Tamlavulin at the time that it had to be mothballed. And the sad thing for me was that you're making redundant a team of people that you probably known when you were growing up. So that was extremely sad and hard to take. It wasn't my decision to shut down Tamlavulin, but in some respects you felt that you were responsible, and it was very sad to see that happening. We did make a promise to the guys that we made redundant that we would take them back if an opportunity arose, and we did do that for a couple of them. And also, I took 4 of my team from Tamlavulin across to Tomintoul, it was pretty sad time. And at that same time, Tomintoul was still producing, and I think it must have been a testament not only to the people that worked there, but also to the owners of the company, that we managed to keep going through the hard times. Okay, we weren't going flat out production, but I mean, we were going at probably between 40 to 50% production during the hard times. And so we weren't as badly affected as most. But yeah, to see some of your neighbours being made redundant was not a good feeling at all.
And to have had this long career and to have seen that, but yet at the same time, some of that spirit made in 83, not necessarily those distilleries, but would now trade at £1,500 a bottle, £2,000 a bottle. Like, if you told those colleagues back then that liquid that they were filling for pennies per litre, probably in old money, would now trade for 5 figures,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got, and also there are a lot of distilleries that were shut down at that time that have been resurrected as well. So, but the ones that spring to mind, I mean, if you can get a cask of Port Ellen, for example, go back to the 1960s, Port Ellen would have just been a normal production from a distillery. But then, as soon as it shut down, then it became quite valuable. And single casks, and I'm sure you've seen a few single cask Port Ellens coming through your shop. They're not cheap. Not just Port Ellen. I mean, there are others as well that command quite high prices. We did something similar. Glencadden was mothballed in 2000, and we resurrected it in 2003. But and again, it sort of commands a higher price than a lot of the Tomintoul because it's smaller production, more limited. But if you get some of the old Glencadden casks from pre-1980s, 1990s, they would be quite valuable.
Yeah, well, lovely whiskey as well. Glencadden has so many fans of Royal Mile whiskies. They're continually nipping my head saying, "You're not buying enough, Arthur, you're not buying enough," because they love to recommend it. They really, really love to recommend it. And am I right in saying, so you bought it out of mothballs, and that was as a process of actually Angus Dundee buying the distillery? Is that right?
Yeah, we again, Mr. Hillman and his two family members had grown the company. Obviously, he didn't own a distillery until 2000, and then from 2000 onwards, we built a blending plant at Tomintoul. We had increased the workforce. We nearly doubled the workforce at Tomintoul over a short period, and basically we were of a size. We needed another distillery, so he'd looked around. The unusual thing about Glencadden, when I was asked to go and see it, I was wearing two hats. I was wearing my production hat and my heritage hat. The production hat was such that it was much smaller than Tomintoul. The economies of scale weren't there. So, did it fit in with the company? It's not. I mean, it's not really it is a blending whiskey, but you were limited to the size of production. But wearing my heritage hat, I've been there since 1825. And it's just a pity that some of the big boys that were selling off distilleries at that time and before didn't see the value of the smaller distilleries. Bruichladdich shut down, resurrected. Tullibardine the same and resurrected. So to get the opportunity to wear my heritage hat and say that it would be terrible if this was demolished and turned into a block of flats. So and it's not an unusual part of it, but Glencadden, the distillery footprint is still the same as it was since 1825. And Claire, who's in the background there, she's been doing some fantastic work for us over the past few months to get some old plans from the Angus archives to show us can't really go back to 1825 because we don't have the plans for that, but obviously the late 1800s we've got plans for, and it's still in the same footprint as it is today. So my heritage hat was on, not my money, I wasn't buying it. Mr. Hillman obviously saw potential and purchased it from Allied Distillers. And to be honest, it was after buying Tomintoul, it was the best decision I think he made because it's a little gem of a distillery.
Well, and also a pretty good time to buy a distillery as well, if you're compared to now. And other things that might have been around on the market then, maybe Bruichladdich still, for the single figure millions that they paid for it and the 60, 70 million or whatever it was they sold it for. I would say that whatever he paid for Glencadden or they paid for Glencadden was a pretty good investment.
And Glencadden again had a good reputation for the new spirit. And we haven't changed any of that. It's It's the same production process. Everything's the same since Allied Distillers had it. So we've added a blend centre there as well, but everything else is just the same. And again, going back to our reciprocal exchanges, that's part of the reason. We don't want to exchange all of Glencadam because we want to keep a substantial amount to ourselves. We only produce 1.4 million litres of alcohol a year, which is quite small compared to Tomintoul. But it's a really nice spirit and complements the company very well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm just going to carry on drinking the 16-year-old single cask here. Sludge.
Yeah, I've had plenty of time to to drink it as you chatted. Can I ask? You might not want to answer this, but was there another choice? Was there another distillery on the table? Was it an either or between Glencadam and somewhere else, or does the gentleman never tell?
The drawback with the internet nowadays is it goes off every now and again. Sorry, I didn't hear what you were saying there.
Okay, we'll move on.
No, we're always on the lookout. We're at that time always on the lookout, but it has to fit in with the company's requirements. There's no point in buying a distillery that doesn't have warehousing on site or effluent treatment, and you have to rely on other companies to process your waste products or whatever. So it has to be a distillery that basically can stand on its own merit.
Brian, and I think it was Graham Fraser who's asked lots of great questions tonight. Thank you, Graham. Is about the Glencadam Visitor Centre. You're looking to build and expand and have a proper visitor centre there, yeah?
You see on the screen, is the visitor centre still on hold? It's never been on hold. It's still very much to the fore. The drawback is that the visitor centre is taking up where the office staff are at the moment. So phase 1 was moving the office staff out, but we'd convert an old warehouse that had been used as a store for many years. So we're converting that at the moment into a suite of offices, laboratory. It's going to be quite a substantial project. And once the office staff have moved in, then we can start on the plans for the visitor centre. And the plans for the visitor centre are we're quite far down the line now with the planning approval. We've got again, our marketing team are working very hard on the design, the interior aspect of it, because Glencadam's quite a small distillery. We want to have that sort of small family style feeling to the visitor centre. So there's a lot. It's not on hold. It's just that you only get one chance at this, and you want to get it right first time.
Well, and it would be great because there's not so much over that way in terms of this. We used to a really lovely route up north in Space Island over on Isla or wherever, but over that way there is not nearly so much as many distilleries did close over that way.
No, and the town of Brechin over the years it's been needing a bit of a boost for the tourism. So we're going to do our bit, and. It's an exciting project, and hopefully once we've got the offices built, hopefully by middle of 2021, we're making a bit of inroads into the building of the visitor centre, where we have the office space at the moment is being the building is being kept, and then we're adding an extension onto the building. So yes, it's an exciting project. And there are still a lot of people working. I hope they're still working in the background feverishly to get it on. The drawback with the office project is it's slightly behind because of the COVID restrictions. We should have been bit further on than we are at the moment. But we're just glad that we're still working on the project.
Good. Well, best of luck with it. Well, before we bring, we're on an hour already. We've done well. Before we bring Claire back in to ask any more questions, Norbert, colleague of mine, great whiskey fan, big part of the Hungarian whiskey scene. What is the oldest vintage Tomintoul at the moment in the warehouse? Do you still have anything from the first year of production?
Yes, we do have a 1965 project, and my internet's gone off again for some reason.
Right, Claire, on you come.
But we've also got 1966s. We've got.
Stop! I'm joking. Carry on.
We've got We've got some older stock that obviously we'll be taking out as single cask bottlings at some point. But yeah, we don't have thousands of casks of 1965 or 1966 maturing.
Oh, Graham's back. Thanks, Graham. Go on, Claire. You can read it out.
Okay, well, I've got a couple as well, but it ties quite nicely in with Graham's question. So, Robert, what's your favourite ever single malt experience?
Oh, single malt experience.
Lucky phrased.
Probably. Well, so it's usually family orientated. So, the birth of my children, or they were born before I moved to Tomintoul. But celebrating their 18th and 21st birthdays with a Tomintoul. I'm very lucky. I've been the last 12, 15 years. I've done quite a bit of travelling, and you go to some far-flung corner of Malaysia or Myanmar or wherever, and you see a bottle. You go into a bar and you see a bottle of Tomintoul. And one experience, I went to Singapore quite a few years ago, and we've got good friends out there now that own a bar in Singapore. And it was the end of a night. And when you're out in these places, you might do a couple of tastings in the evening. And by about midnight, all you want to do is go back to the hotel and rest. And the guy who looks after our business out in the ASEAN countries said, "Oh, we've got another bar to visit." And I went, "Oh no, not! I want to go to bed. Oh no, this is fantastic. I want you to go and visit this bar." And we went into this bar, and it wasn't even set up for us. There was a couple, because over there the bars are slightly different. You buy a bottle, you don't get measures. You buy the bottle. And here was a guy. I walked into the bar, and it's called the Quake Bar in Singapore. And I'm looking at all the expressions that they have. Some really old and very expensive whiskies. Here's a guy sitting at a table with his wife, partner, drinking 33-year-old Tomintoul. And it wasn't set up. And because of that, as we were I spotted this right away. And all of a sudden, another bottle of 33-year-old came onto the table. And we just spent the evening drinking 33-year-old Tomintoul. And it was one of these spontaneous occasions where, you're quite... It gets to you a little bit because you think about the people who made it 33 years ago from a really small, valley up in Speyside. And here we are 33 years later, drinking it in a bar in Singapore. So you've got lots of experiences like that. Claire's bound to have the same. I mean, every place you go to, you'll be totally amazed at the experience.
Yeah, no, I definitely am. I think when you go into a bar and someone orders the bottle of the company you work for or a dram, it does get you a little bit. Or just people turning up to listen to me talk also gets me every time. I still don't understand. I still don't get it, but they do. They come. Some.
So when the Quake Bar in Singapore gets the Tomintoul single cask 2004 Royal Mile bottling, I'll have to go across. You'll have to come with me, Arthur. We'll have to go across to Singapore and just.
Your internet is breaking up again.
No. I'll carry your bags. No problem. I'll be there.
Oh no! I've got my PA Nikki. She's offered to carry the bags many times on my foreign trips, but no, it's we're very fortunate. I don't do so much travelling now, but because we've got brand ambassadors, so they rake up the air miles going to, and it's a young person's job. It's not for an old guy like me. Although I still like to travel.
Yeah. By the way, I did fall for this Nikki is your daughter thing.
No. My daughter Cheryl.
Yeah, no, I've got it now, but for years I've been saying the distillery wrong, and I fell for that trick that you told the tourists every year at Whiskey Fringe.
Oh, that was at the that was at the Fringe. I would say these are my two daughters, but no, one's my daughter and one's not. She's adopted. She's adopted.
Mm-hmm. So,
but yeah, we've had many good times at the Fringe.
One thing I think we've spoken about before is tasting notes and your feelings on tasting notes. But we've been quietly drinking a brilliant Tomintoul, which I think is. Funny enough, you mentioned the 33, and I'd forgotten that one because that was a belter as well. But I think this is my favourite. Yeah, I think this is my favourite Tomintoul. I just absolutely love it. But tasting notes, you're not a big fan. You think we've maybe gone a bit too far generally in whiskey culture with this? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I do tasting notes, don't get me wrong, but sometimes when people are comparing whiskies, they get too hung up on, for example, if you nose and taste a whiskey, and Claire's got a different opinion, and I've got a different opinion, there's a great debate about what who's right, and sometimes that can get lost in the because if you know something that might be it's got a hint of apples, and Claire thinks it's pears, you think no, I don't get any pears from that, and if you take it back into the centre of the wheel, and bear with me because I have got what I'm interested in. If I can just bear with me.
You did a Blue Peter moment there, one you.
Yeah, one I prepared earlier. Those who know, this is the tasting wheel.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the centre part. That's what I'm interested in. But from my own personal experience, I'll be interested in comparing it with the outer ring as well. But that doesn't mean to say, and I'm just comparing, just say for our Tomintoul 16, it could have floral or estery, and that can range from fresh flowers to fresh fruit, unperfumed soap, scented lavender, roses, carnations. So if you get all of those, then you know you're in the right ballpark. In the centre of the wheel, you get floral and estery. In the wheel, if you pick up, from my 16-year-old that you're nosing at the moment, if you pick up tar or burning wood or smoked TCP or iodine, then there's something wrong with your nose because there's none of that in the 16. And sometimes I feel that the tasting notes can be, they're useful. It gives people an idea as to what style they go for, a bit like wine. But sometimes they can get a bit flowery and a bit fruity. But I'm sure. I mean, this whiskey, for example, before we even nosed it, we've got 50% of our mind made up, maybe even more, as to what we're going to get from it. I know it was my first fill bourbon cask. I know I'm going to get vanilla from that first fill bourbon, especially after 16 years. So I know that if I don't get vanilla notes and custard notes coming out of that, then maybe the cask wasn't doing its job properly. But I'll leave you and Claire to go through the flowery tasting notes.
Yeah, let's see who gets the biggest eye roll, Claire.
And I'll just enjoy it.
On you go.
No, I'm just going to say I'm quite bad with tasting notes. I always go simple, and then I'm always getting in trouble because I'm not going specific enough. You know, I'll just say like, oh, I'm getting apples, and then I'll get pulled up of what type of apples, and I'm like, oh, come on. But I think I think that's where it gets for me. I agree. I think that's where I draw the line. I think they're helpful for people just starting out for whiskey, or if you go to a shop and you maybe don't have a chance to speak to people that work there, you know, you've got a slight idea of what you're getting on the nose and the palate. But for me, that's where it draws the line. And I think if you enjoy it, then that's just the main thing. But that means you need to buy the bottle in order to do that. So I suppose you shouldn't put any tasting notes on any bottles there. So you have to buy every single bottle.
Well, I started really when it's been about 20 years, I suppose now I've been working whiskey. When I started, I was right into that. I was buying casks for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, doing all organising the tasting panels and doing all those. And then I did a bit of writing for Whiskey Magazine where you would write out all these notes. And I loved it. I was really into writing all these, you know, very descriptive flowery tasting notes. But slowly I've walked back from that, because I still feel I can assess quality without it having to have very specific things. Like there are certain tasting notes now that mean big money, like, you know, the tropical mango, pineapple, those kind of things, you know, tend to say old style whiskey, all that kind of thing. But with this sample, when this came through, is a really good example. Stuck my nose in it, had a quick taste, was delighted, absolutely. And my colleague Sam, who sits over the way from me and helps a lot with the purchasing, actually, and he's my sounding board a lot for these things. You know, he started writing down all the notes, which is what we normally do when we're assessing a single cask. Do we want to go for it or not? And I was just like, stop, Sam, just enjoy this. This is great. Absolutely, we're doing this. This is so obviously a great whiskey. And a brilliant expression of Tomintoul. Like if you like Tomintoul, if you like Tomintoul 16, it's that and just a wee bit more, just everything kind of amplified. The higher strengths as well, I think, helps it great.
Higher strength, yes. And the normal Tomintoul 16 is a mix of different 16-year-old casks, where this is a single cask. We call it BB1, first fill bourbon. So you're going to get probably more enhanced notes. You'll still get I keep saying it's a very mellow, easy drinking whiskey. This is at 60.4%. So I always tell people, add a little bit of water. I've added quite a bit of water to this one because, but even at the high strength, it doesn't, you know, it's still got that vanilla sort of custard type nose to it, and the taste is still quite mellow.
Yeah, and I think the fruitiness is really pronounced. It's got the floral character as well, you'd expect, but it does actually have a slightly dried mango trail mix kind of fruitiness to it, which is, sorry, Robert, I'm going off on one. Is that too much?
Sorry, I know you're a good friend of Dave Broom, so I wouldn't like to upset any of his tasting notes. But if you buy the Whiskey Magazine, you know, they use, I don't know if they still do it. They used to get whiskies and they would compare, two people would compare the whiskies. And sometimes you would look at them and think, are they tasting the same whiskey?
It's extremely common.
But it's very subjective, and it is, I mean, everybody could, don't tell Dave Broom, everybody could write a book on their tasting notes. But some do it better than others. Dave, I've got a lot of respect for Dave. He does a lot of, he's got quite a good nose for for
an amateur.
Whiskey. He's probably been in the business just about as long as I have.
He's a super guy. So nice question from Adrian Carr. Arthur, have you folks got an open bottle at Royal Mile Whiskies? We do now. There you go. This is my bottle. I finished my little sample. I've opened my bottle. Actually, I'm not in work for a few days, but probably around about the first or second. The second half of this bottle will be up at the shop, so the guys can go up and try. And then also there's a question from Graham Fraser, if I just bring that up. Any bottles of the Royal Mile Whisky Tomintoul single cask bottling left? Yes. So it came quite close to Christmas. So I think we're about halfway there very quickly without selling it too hard, because it kind of came a little bit late in. So we've probably got it on the shelf for, I would say, first half of January, hopefully. So yeah, I'm going to pull myself.
And the good thing is that there's a substantial donation to the charity, the MND Scotland charity.
Yeah, and they sent a lovely message actually. They'd spotted that we were donating to them, and they got in touch before Christmas and said how much they appreciated it. So that's great. Claire, any other thoughts on the whiskey?
I think it's lovely. I haven't actually added any water to it. I don't know if that's the copious amount of alcohol I've drank over the festive period has set me up well for this. I think it's great. I think it's great on its own. I mean, I completely agree. I get loads of that kind of tropical notes towards the end, but it's got the DNA of Tomintoul, but it's just a really nice single cask that I could quite happily nose all day. And taste-wise, it's so good as well. I have said that 16 or the 14 were always my favourites, but this could be a contender for the lead, I think, after tonight, maybe.
Yeah, I'm very much biased to the 16-year-old, but over the last few years, we've taken out a lot of different expressions, and I've gone, oh, that's up there with the best. And the cigar malt we've just introduced, I think, is something, again, it's totally different. But when you remember, it all started with a new spirit that didn't change. It hasn't changed. It's all to do with the cask.
Lovely. Yeah, 60.4%, Claire. So if
60.4,
and
it doesn't feel like 60.4.
It's a real surprise, that. Yeah. So
and taste
great.
Like
I think we've kind of.
I was going to say, it doesn't taste like 60.4%.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No,
it doesn't. It's just spicy, but in a really nice way, not in a way that the alcohol just overpowers it. It's really nice.
I used one of my previous production manager. He called Tomintoul a dangerous whiskey because it was so easy drinking. Because it's very mild, mellow, and it goes down very easily.
Great. Well, I think we've kind of got to a nice natural end. Unless, Claire, you had any other questions you wanted to ask, or
I've got a few, but I won't.
Carry on, Claire.
No, do it, Claire.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask.
As many as you want.
You say that we get to 11 o'clock, and you're like, "Well, you do."
No, I can sit back.
People are locked down; they can't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's
true. Exactly.
I was going to ask. So I know Graham asked earlier about your favorite single malt experience. I was going to ask what your favorite whiskey experience is at Tomintoul over the last 30 years.
You mean drinking the whiskey or just achievements?
Just whiskey in general, yeah. Achievements or an experience related to whiskey.
I think a lot of the experience in my job. I saw a question earlier about what my job entails. As I said, I've got a team of people around me. So I've got production manager, production supervisor. I've got my office team. I've got a production warehousing team. But I think it was when I was getting involved in one of the projects. I was asked to build the blend centre at Tomintoul, and I had no experience whatsoever about civils, steel work, anything. So I mean, I keep saying to people, I know a little about a lot. I don't know. I'm not sort of specialised in one area. And to be given the remit to build the blend centre in 2003 and to see it the size it is today and how successful it is, I mean, that to me, that's a sense of achievement. I think every day is different. Every day I'm at an age where I could retire. I don't want to retire. I just want to keep on going because I enjoy what I'm doing. And every day is different. Every day you've got new challenges, some good ones, some not so good ones. But you always end up being satisfied in what you're doing. So I think some of the project work would be some of the achievements. And again, taking out the Tomintoul as a single malt and seeing it all over the world. I'm not the person that's introducing it worldwide, but when you see, as I said earlier, a brand like this produced in a small valley, very cold valley at the moment, in the middle of Scotland, to see it sold worldwide, that's a hell of an achievement.
Yeah. My other
That's
question
not my
was,
achievement.
don't feel modest. I was going to say, where would you like to see Tomintoul in the next 30 years?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think we'll still be making a quality spirit. I'll definitely be retired within 30 years. We'll still be making a quality spirit. Hopefully, we've laid down the obviously we're still producing, and we've done that very successfully for 55 years. No reason why we can't do that for the next 30 years. And whoever takes on the role of looking after the success of Tomintoul continues in the same way. Single malt by that time will hopefully have grown, because they've grown a hell of a lot in the last few years. How far they can grow, I do not know, but that's up to the family as to how far they want to take it. But we've grown a hell of a lot in the last 20 years. Another 30 years, who knows?
There's a question from Sean. How would you describe Tomintoul's How would you describe Tomintoul's spirit character? What makes it so unique and tasty?
The new spirit, very light, very estery and fruity, and that's a style. And the style comes from a number of things. I mean, we use the same malted barley as many other companies. Fermentation. I saw an earlier comment about fermentation.
Yeah, we missed that. Sorry.
Fermentations are 54 to 64 hours. The bottleneck at Tomintoul is the still house, and you don't want to rush the distillation. So that is a bit of a bottleneck. With the fermentation time being such, the distillation is critical to the quality of the quality of the spirit. And because the stills, if you see a picture of Tomintoul stills, there's a lot of contact with copper. Very tall stills, and one of the key things that when you're distilling is that the more contact with copper, the lighter the spirit. So, for example, I've got copper stills. If I was to run that spirit through stainless steel condensers, I would get more of a meaty, sulfury note to the new spirit, which we don't want. So we have copper stills, obviously, very tall, so the lighter elements are coming over first. And then we've got copper condensers as well. So, and that was how the people who designed and built Tomintoul wanted the spirit character to be. So the spirit character, hopefully, is going to keep going and keep coming out to be quite light and fruity.
Mm-hmm. So Adrian's just asked, shell and tube condensers.
Shell and tube condensers, yes.
And Graham's back with your favourite ever.
That's a naughty one. That's a naughty one from Graham. Actually, Tomintoul 16. That was the first one with Angus Dundee that we took out that I was heavily involved in, and an ex sales guy we had at the time was a peer of the realm, and him and I had a fantastic late afternoon, all evening session, just basically tasting different 16-year-old cask samples. That was a memorable one as well. Not every day you have a peer of the realm in your company helping you to write tasting notes for a whiskey. So a 16-year-old would be there. Probably a 33-year-old, if it's all Tomintoul ones. And strangely, a very young Glencadam, 10-year-old Glencadam. I've just upset Douglas Fitchett, probably the production manager down there, because he prefers the 15 to the 10. But I like a 10-year-old Glencadam. Peated whiskies to me are an acquired taste, so they don't really. I don't have them very high up in my list. They can be. It depends what the occasion is. Obviously, I got a soft spot for where I started at Glenlivet and where my father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all worked. So I have a soft spot for that, and also for Benriach, where I did my management training. So quite a number. That's a terrible question. It's like trying to pick your favourite. I've got 2 grandchildren, and I was trying to pick your favourite grandchild. You can't do that. That's terrible.
We all know your favourite daughter's Nikki, so.
Oh, don't tell Cheryl.
Cheryl is on this.
Cheryl will be on here in just a minute.
I thought of another question, actually, talking about your father, your great-grandfather, your grandfather. Money no object, and I know you're a person who really appreciates history and heritage. Money no object. What would you put back of the old way of distilling and distilleries? I know there's progress, and I know there's good reasons for streamlining the method of production. But is there something you would like to just, perhaps on an emotional level, just put back?
Yeah. I sit in the fence with the automation. I know that there are many distilleries fully automated. You could run some distilleries from your house if you had the right passwords and connectivity. I think it's because of my age. I still like to go back to the old direct firing, the old traditional ways of doing things, wooden washbacks, which we don't have at Tomintoul. So if I was going, a lot of people now are designing craft distilleries. To design a craft distillery that they wouldn't go back to direct firing, that would be probably a backward step because of the efficiencies and the health and safety aspect. But go back to let the operators, let them make a decision when the final cut's going to be on the spirit. We have operators at Tomintoul and Glencadam. They know when to cut the spirit, to put the spirit onto spirit, and also the cut point, taking it off before they drive off the rest as feints. In some places that's taken away. It's all done by density meters and whatever. And I can appreciate why. But if I was building a distillery of my own, I would have some automation, but not to that level. And I would still go back to some of the old traditional methods. Okay, I wouldn't go back to the 1800s, but it would be more traditional than probably that would be in some places nowadays. And I don't want to knock these guys. They are super consistent, super efficient, and they have spent a lot of money to do that. And they're getting consistency of the spirit. But I would like to. I'm too old now, but to design your own distillery, even a small craft distillery. A friend of mine's doing that out in the Far East at the moment. That would be quite an. If you had put your own stamp on it. Don't.
Well,
hopefully no accountants listening. Don't let the accountants into the. Just give us a pot of money to do what we want, and we'll get on with it.
Well, I suppose these new single malt distilleries, and they are distilleries to make single malt, they can build a distillery with relative confidence now that in 5-6 years' time they'll be able to sell all their production, or as much as they want to sell, for £50 to £70 a bottle. So, fingers crossed. You've seen a few busts.
There are lots of these companies, lots of these distilleries that started up in the last 10, 12 years still going, and there's a lot just started up in the last few years. And is it going to be difficult for these guys? Probably yes, but with the right people behind it, with the right marketing, and some of them have got unique selling points. Who knows? But hopefully there's room for them as well.
Have you tried many of them? Are there any that you've been particularly impressed with, or have you not?
I've been round a few. I've tasted the spirit from Lindor. Mm-hmm. That was It's when we visit some of these places. I mean, I've been to King's Barnes as well, but again, it was quite young. The Ballindalach New Spirit was quite. That's just down the road from me. It's quite a nice spirit. I haven't tasted any of the mature yet. Hopefully, I'll get the chance in the not too distant future. But yeah, there's a lot of these guys that are making quality, and they have to make it. They've got to make quality because they're not going to be in a position. They're not going to be putting it into blends. They're going to be selling it as a single malt, or even a lot of cases single casks. So yeah, but I think some of them will survive. Sadly, I'm sure some might be even sold on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's certainly been as a retailer or as a buyer, it's been. You just kind of think you're getting the measure of what your job is, and now suddenly you're having these meetings with these new distilleries who are bringing something to market, and the price could be 45 quid, or it could be £200 for a 3-year-old, and it's really, really unusual conversations. So different to dealing with companies that have existed for 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. These brands have existed for a very, very long time. But it's fascinating to watch.
It also depends on the consumer. Are they wanting to buy the bottled whiskies from King's Barnes and Ballindalach and Ardnamurchan? Are they buying them as an investment, just to lay it down, to say we'll keep these bottles, or are they buying it to drink, which should be done?
Yeah, well, two very different things, or more than two different things are going on all at the same time, and it's all kind of tangled up. The secondary market is bubbling away very, very hot, but at the same time, who is actually making a whiskey to drink, and how does that whiskey get drunk? And we need these bottles to be opened, else what is the point? And there are so many of them as well. That's the thing. And if they all want to release 3 or 4 SKUs, our shelves suddenly start to look very full of 5-year-old, £95, £150 whiskies.
And it's difficult for you guys as well, because I've been in Royal Miles whiskey shop many, many times, and
how you manage
usually a book. I collect books about it, like whiskey, or to have I don't know if you still got Sandy Alexander with you.
Absolutely, managing the warehouse. Yeah.
What about the Jolly Toper, Mark? Is he still with you?
Of course, yeah. We can't get rid of any of these clowns.
So that's one of the reasons I visit these guys, because it's not just to go into the shop to see our products, but you have a chat with them. And what I find amazing is that, I mean, we're not any different. The range of Tomintoul that we've got, the range of Glencadam that we have, even the range of Ballantrae, and this is only from our company. How you manage to stock those as well as the other expressions that you get. I mean, there's 30 expressions of one distillery and 25 from another. It must be quite difficult for you guys to choose what you want to stock.
Before, it wasn't really a choice. We would stock everything 10 years ago. You know, of course, you're a new whiskey or you are an existing Scotch whiskey, would be delighted to stock your product. Welcome to the industry. Wow, it's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. But now there has to be more choice because there are too many, well, for us to manage, even to set up the products online and you know, keep them on the shelf. There are so many products available. It's got to that point where we're starting to have to be more selective. But
and we see that at the Whisky Fringe, you know, people with 10 different expressions, but there's no way you could, and we're only one company.
Exactly. We had to ask people to be, you know, to pare down what they wanted us to stock at Whisky Fringe because the industry was becoming so busy, let alone with all the world whiskies. I mean, at one stage we had 22 Swedish single malts or expressions on the shelf. I mean, that's bonkers. It's probably my fault. Yeah, but it's very, very different to even when I started in the trade. Well, James Bell has been very patient. His question's been on here.
I see one here. Yeah, any plan of using different grains in the future? Very easy answer. No. Some distilleries are using rye. Some are using the grain distilleries use wheat and high DP malted barley, but for the single malt, for the pot still side, no plans to use any different grains. And I know that some people are using rye at the moment, which I'm sure will add a different character and perspective to the single malts and their blends. But we'll stick to the malted barley. And I noticed one previously, and it's a good friend of mine. He's been making a few comments. Andy Watts. Andy is he's the master distiller from Distell in South Africa.
I wondered if it was him. Yeah,
done an amazing job out there. He's now obviously like a roving ambassador within the Distell company, but because they took over the Burn Stewart company, but he's been getting accolades right, left, and centre over the past, and rightly so because he's done an amazing job for the industry in South Africa. And I mean, you mentioned earlier about where you see Tomintoul. Hopefully, we can compete in a marketplace that's got whiskies from South Africa, obviously Ireland, America, Australia, China, Japan. I mean, we're in a very competitive market, and hopefully we can compete with the best.
I echo what you say about what Andy Watts has done with Three Ship Single Malt, and Baines is a really, really good drink. Baines is a really good spirit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, really, really impressive stuff. But I suppose coming back to Tomintoul 16-year-old, which this single cask is like an amplified version of, as a retailer, we really appreciate old favourites now. And I think there are people starting to return to that. Sure, there's loads of noise with endless limited editions and endless must try new things, but we really appreciate old great whiskies that you come back to, like Tomintoul 16, Tomintoul 16. Some of them, I won't get it right first time, but
I'm going to send you a towel. I'm going to send you a branded towel.
Lovely. Some of them go like Old Motley 17, and that's why people get so upset. We like these old, reliable favourites that are good year after year after year. And even us who thrive on newism, new things, something to put on Twitter, something to put on Instagram, we genuinely love being able to recommend bottles like Tomintoul 16 to people who just want to come in and buy a nice bottle of whiskey. They don't want to know about something that's trending on bloody Facebook or whatever.
We found the same with Glencadam. Between 2000 and 2003, there was no production. So eventually we had to take the 15-year-old off the market because there was no stock. However, the amount of people that were asking, when are you going to reintroduce the 15-year-old Glencadam? And obviously, after 2018, when it became 15 years old, in 2019, obviously, we reintroduced the 15-year-old. So you're right, a lot of people they grew up with the favourites, they want to stick with them. You can get your wine finishes and your different cask types, but they'll always just be limited editions for a specific period or specific market. You're always going to get the core range coming back to the fore. I hope Claire's taking all this on board for all the. Claire keeps sending me emails, usually twice a day, with questions.
Yeah, I do. I pester you quite a lot. I'm like, just another thing. I know we spoke about this before, but technically, can you explain this? And it'll be a list of 10, 15 questions that you'll answer in red.
Yeah, it's always, just red. One more thing. Just one more thing.
I know. Sorry. It's just, I think, for me, it's the more that I think I know about whiskey, the less I know. There's always something that I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. So it's so good for me to have someone that I can pester on the other side of an email just to ask, because I'm forever thinking of new questions and new things that I need to know. So that's where you come in handy, Robert.
Very good. I'm glad that I'm useful for somebody.
Well, I don't know if Arthur, if you want to show a couple of videos. You mentioned earlier on your friend Andy, and I think if this works, I might have something to show you.
Congratulations on achieving 30 years as the manager of the Tomintoul Distillery, Robert. It has been my pleasure to have known and worked with you over the past 20 of those years. I am grateful for your friendship and for you always being there to discuss anything whiskey. Your humble demeanour is testimony to who you are as a person and who is respected immensely within the Scotch whisky industry and further afield. 2020 has been a difficult year for us all, but I am looking forward to 2021 being kinder, and hopefully we meet up for a long overdue celebratory dram. Slangeval.
I've got plenty more of these, though.
I was just speaking about Andy. Really, really good friend, really nice guy. And I mean, we've got lots of friends in the industry and outside the industry as well. Arthur and myself have got mutual friends just down not far from where Arthur stays. Jim and Linda Brown. Now, Jim was involved in a sort of a roundabout way in the industry, but his passion has been in the collecting ephemera, everything to do with Scotch whisky. So it's amazing how in this industry, you can make connections just by mutual friends. It's an amazing industry.
Well, we wanted to do a kind of, what did you say it was called, Arthur? When we showed the videos at the end. The video, the TV show. Something about life.
I can't remember.
I can't remember it now. No, it'll come back to me. Anyway, we wanted to do that. So I've got a couple more. So here's Julie.
Hi Robert, hope all well with you. I'm honoured to have been asked to say a few words for your 30th anniversary at Tomintoul. So first of all, congratulations on spending 30 years in the same distillery and making it what it is today. We met 10 years ago on a trip to South Africa, and to this day, this is really the best memories I have, the best trip I've ever had in my career. And not only because South Africa is a wonderful country to visit, but the company at the time was second to none. So thank you for that. Thank you for all these memories and the great time we had. I wish you all the best and I hope to catch up with you soon.
Well, hi Robert, and congratulations on reaching your 30th anniversary with Tomintoul Distillery. I've actually been associated with you for many years, except for a short period when you were given a Bosman around about 2000 when the distillery was sold to Angus Dundee. But it was nice to get back together with you again just a few years later. I've got many fond memories of working with you, Robert, and I think the one which sticks in my mind most is when you and I were in KL with Tomaroon School, and you were asked to give prizes to competition winners in a bar in Kuala Lumpur, and I remember vividly many good prizes being given by you in your usual way, and then some music came on, and suddenly Robert was doing the Gangnam Style, which had my eyes popping out. I was most surprised, and I have to say he was very good at it. I'm sure he would give you an example of his dancing at some point for all those who are with you at the moment. But anyway, Robert, it's been a pleasure working with you. I'd like to wish you all the best, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Okay, Robert, bye-bye.
Hello, Robert. 30 years in the industry. That's quite some time. It reminds me of that year 1990 when you entered the industry, and it coincided with me starting my career as a whiskey writer. Of course, we have more things we share, like the love for single malt, especially Tomintoul and Glencairn. We also were roughly born in the same year, so there's a lot we can always talk about. We both love to collect books, and I collect packagings. I've been doing that for more than 40 years even. So I dug into our collection. We're sitting in a room that exhibits all the packagings, and I found a special one. It's even older than the 30 years you've been in the industry. Here's a Tomintoul, 33 years old. We thoroughly enjoyed this one. From the Netherlands, we wish you a wonderful day and a wonderful 2021 and a continuation of your amazing career. Bye-bye.
Congratulations.
That's real cool. Although with Brian Megson, I can't remember doing the Gangnam Style in Malaysia. But anyway, the worst thing now is my grandkids will want me to do it the next time I'm visiting them.
So you should.
Well,
This is your life. That was it. This is your life.
This is your life. Yeah.
What Brian forgets to tell you is that when the Hillmans had left us in 1999 to fly down to meet Brian, who was a commercial director, I think he was at that time, and I said they don't want to buy Tam Navulin, they want to buy Tomintoul. His comment was, "Tough. It's not for sale." It's amazing. It's amazing what about another 10 months will do to you when you become CEO of White Mackay and you want to sell off Tomintoul. So yeah, he was right. I was a Bosman. I was given a free transfer to Angus Dundee. The best thing he ever did.
Oh dear. So Adrian's asking, are there any more wine cask finishes in the pipeline for Glencairn?
At the moment, we're always experimenting. We're dealing with a company at the moment who supplies quite a variety of casks, and it's work in progress, but we are looking at different wine and wine finishes at the moment. A lot of that, not really under my responsibility. A lot of it is being done by the team at Coatbridge, Claire, Ian Forteeth, and I don't know who else is involved in it, but they are monitoring these wine casks at the moment, and who knows what we'll take them out as. But the feedback that I'm getting is that they are progressing quite well, and we also do it for customers as well. We're quite a unique company in that respect. But yeah, all I can say is to Adrian, watch this space.
Right, well, I said we'd reached a natural end about an hour ago. I got that wrong, didn't I?
I told you earlier, I just keep talking.
I said to my girls that we'd watched half of The Sound of Music yesterday. I said, we'll be all done by 8:30. We'll watch the second half of The Sound of Music. But I think they might give up on that one. Well, exactly. And we left it at a point and they said, it's lovely. It's a really optimistic film. And under my breath, I kind of thought, well, the Nazis are coming, but,
I watched it yesterday.
Did you? It's great. It still stands up.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
But I suppose, I'd like to echo what Claire said also in terms of that you are there as a person that we can ask questions of. And there's plenty of master distiller guys trotting off around the world who've got their kind of showy sales patter kind of thing going on. But you are kind enough to come down to Whisky Fringe because you enjoy it, because you enjoy talking to people and our staff going into our shop. And we really value that. It's really, really important for guys younger than me coming through and myself to have that connection to the past, to know how things were done, to know how things are done. And it's folk like you that make the whisky industry an industry that we're all really proud to work in.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm just pleased that I can help out. Don't know much to say about more to that. I was quite impressed with the video comments I was getting from that was a nice touch. I like that. But,
that was Arthur's idea.
I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy to be in the background. If somebody wants to ask a question, get some information or point in the right direction, I'm quite happy to help out, because I was there once and I relied on quite a few guys to point me in the right direction. So hopefully we can do that for the younger generation.
Great. Wow.
And hopefully, well, I better not put pressure on my grandson, but if Ethan wants to come into the business in the next 15, 20 years, it's one of the best industries to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Holly as well, because it's open, equal opportunities for men and women in the business nowadays.
Yeah, that's been around a couple of decades, equal opportunities, but yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's been a great pleasure to have this chat. What's Graham saying? Thank you for all your questions. Yeah, thank you for all your questions, Graham. We really appreciate it. Know you're out there. Betty, thank you also.
Great interview.
Betty, I know Betty's husband. I worked with him at Glenlivet many years ago. Nice guy, Eric. So, Slungiva.
Well, thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you, Claire, for hosting also.
Thanks to you for organising and asking all the questions and everything else. I'll say have a great new year, Robert, when it comes. And you, Arthur.
Yeah,
and enjoy the Sound of Music.
Hopefully a lot of people are, hopefully we get all out of lockdown soon. But in the meantime, I just hope everybody stays safe, takes care, and we'll all manage to do a bit of travelling enjoying a dram in hotels, pubs, whatever. So, and obviously to the hospitality industry, they're going through a hard time at the moment. So
Really
we'll
tough, yeah.
raise a dram to them. More importantly, the people who are keeping us safe, the NHS and everybody else, we'll raise a dram to them as well.
Yeah,
Thank you
very
very
much so.
Angela.
Cheers. And I hope to see you guys at Whisky Fringe 2020 something. 2020 something. Maybe 2022. Yeah, 2020 something. So yeah, thanks for all your whiskey over the years.
Okay. No.
See you later, Robert. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go. You can sign us out.
Oh, great. Bye, everyone. See you later.